Hello. There's been a football match recently. It's called the Euros 2020. Yes, it is 2022 now, but they are called the Euros 2020. And the England football team, and here I am, of course, referring to football rather than that game you Americans refer to as football. So let's get back to football. And Gareth Southgate talking about the England team's somewhat less than stellar performance in the Euros few days ago. He says the racial abuse suffered by various players after they missed penalties adds another layer of difficulty for their performance in major tournaments. Right. Now, what Southgate is saying is that racism stops a team from playing properly. And I don't suppose it would have had anything to do with the highly unpopular action the England team performed, and I'm using the word performed deliberately, the action of what they call taking the knee, which I call kneeling down. And so before I go on, I want to talk about the history of this kneeling business, because it has as murky a history as the action that it is now. It was started by a National Football League, and that's American football. Let's not go into this. Person called Colin Kaepernick, who instead of standing for the national anthem, knelt down, made an exhibition of himself and started a trend. Now, Kaepernick was assessed by Kevin Seifert. Now, he's for ESPN. I do not know what ESPN is. I don't have the time to find out, and I don't really care, but I assume it is some sort of sporting publication. And he assessed Kaepernick as being several years past his best at the time when he made this gesture again, advisedly, and he had been, I know, he'd been more or less sidelined as a team member until at that point anyway, and the Seifert pointed out that if Kaepernick had been any good, it didn't matter about his personal life or his opinions or his bad behaviour on the pitch. They would have still employed him. I mean, basically, he didn't put it in so many words, but it seemed to me that what Seifert was saying was that had Kaepernick been caught in bed with a flock of sheep and a goldfish, they would still have had him out there on the field playing football. I'll leave a link to that, and it's an article he wrote called Colin Kaepernick's Biggest Problem, Performance, Not Politics. All right, and then there's somebody else called Brad Gangan who said he wasn't a good NFL quarterback. He never was a good NFL quarterback, and that he missed too many easy passes. Okay, and to prove how, Gangon also proved how the NFL would employ all sorts of unsavoury people by listing a whole set of them. So I'm just quoting Gangon now. He said there's somebody called Michael Vick who apparently murdered dogs. I don't know the circumstances of that. Greg Hardy, who choked his girlfriend and threatened her with a gun. Adam Jones, who left a victim partially paralysed. He's after a fight of some sort. It sounds like a real sweetheart. And Alden Smith, who's been arrested 5 times since coming into the league. That's not before and he cleaned up his act. No, since. And then there's Chris Culliver, who said gay men shouldn't be allowed to play football, apparently because of the way they might have behaved in the changing rooms. Okay, and I'll leave a link to that as well. So now what Matt Walsh said about Kaepernick was, and here he's hedging his words a little bit, so you've got to make allowance for the fact that he's being diplomatic. Kaepernick is sullen, spoiled, ungrateful. This country has given him everything. He's a self-victimising drama queen, a rich, whiny, entitled complainer. Ah, Mr. Walsh, can't you come out with things in a more direct way? Anyway, so what Kaepernick said was he was protesting against the lack of attention given to the issues of racial inequality and police brutality in the United States. But you see, this has been taken up as a black issue, whereas from what I've read about American police brutality, it tends to be more aimed at white people than black people most of the time. And there's been some horrendous examples of police brutality against white people, which have got very little publicity, and certainly none of the publicity of the sort of people Kaepernick is standing up for. I'm not going to stand up to show pride in a flag, this is Kaepernick, for a country that oppresses black people and people of colour. Well, you see, that appeals to all the white people who want to be whipped. Okay, so look, it's true that Hungary has its racism problems. Hungary itself was part of an empire, but the empire was more confined to Central Europe and European countries. It didn't really have a lot of worldwide exposure, the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So people in Hungary, and indeed many other Central and Eastern European countries, they are not accustomed to the sort of different cultures that the British would have got to know about, or even the French, who had colonies, big colonies, or the Belgians who had big colonies in Africa and India, and went all over the place, like the Portuguese who had colonies in South America and in India. So there's a slightly more cosmopolitan attitude in those countries than there is in Central and Eastern European countries. So Hungary is part of that, and it does have its racism problems. And I'm quite sure that something can be cleaned up. But because of this, UEFA, the European Football Authority, whatever the initials stand for, as you can tell, I'm not a big football fan. I used to go to Leeds United matches when I was a teenager, once or a few times, but since then, and that was a long time ago, I've had not much interest in it. I got interested in horses. Who wants to see people chasing a ball round a field when you could be chasing a horse round a field? Anyway, that's entirely beside the point. So because of Hungarian misbehaviour during other matches, Hungary was under some sort of a stricture. They could play football, but the game was under some sort of sanction. You couldn't have an audience. So you could play the game, but you weren't allowed to send people in. But there was a loophole. And that was children could come in. And of course, if you had children coming in, so could their guardians, mums and dads and teachers or whatever. So around 30,000 people were in that stadium, all comprising children and their guardians. Now, when the England team knelt just before kickoff, a substantial group of the spectators started jeering. Just a minute. Yep, still recording. I'm always worried about it. You don't know how many times I've accidentally turned the camera off and then gone on and had to make the whole thing. Anyway, so the children apparently started jeering, and then a lot of other people started jeering as well, and I would have been among the first, frankly. And then Gareth Southgate comes up with this immortal quote: "I have no idea why people would try to boo that gesture." And then he called for more education around anti-discrimination. And he said, I think very often young people can't know why they're doing it, really. They're being influenced by older adults. Older adults. Older adults. They're adults. They're not children. Of course they're older. Anyway, he went on to say he'd been very surprised. And then he said this: we do it to try to educate. Mr. Southgate, you are there to direct a team of young men, many of whom are not of the highest intelligence, but who do have a tremendous talent for kicking a ball. And that's what they're being paid to do, to kick a ball. For education, you go to somebody like Catherine Birbalsingh and her Michaela School. It's not your job, Mr. Southgate. And when you say you and your team are there to educate the spectators, you are not only overstepping the mark, you are insulting anyone who came in to watch you play football. Right. He said he should accept criticism for the subsequent performance of his players. We're disappointed because, of course, if we're going to be a team that gets to the final stages of a World Cup, these are the types of games that we have to win, he added. Right, then, so the England team went on to lose 1-0 to Hungary, which was, according to Southgate, not only because of the racism of the crowd, but, get this, because the weather was warm. It was Hungary. It was summer. Goodness me, what a surprise. It was warm. Who'd have thought that? All right, Mr. Southgate, perhaps you should educate yourself on a little bit of geography. Because in Central Europe and Eastern Europe, in the summer, it is very warm. Let me educate you about this. Land heats quickly and loses heat quickly. Sea heats slowly and loses heat slowly. So, in the summer, Central and Eastern Europe is bloody hot. And in the winter, it's bloody freezing. Britain is surrounded by water, so it neither gets bloody hot nor bloody freezing because of the heat store in the sea. Have you learnt that, Mr. Southgate? When you go to Hungary in the summer, it's going to be rather warm. Just get your men ready for that. And stop trying to educate Hungarians about racism. All right, well, that's my advice for today. I'm Granniopteryx. I'm to be found on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute, and perhaps Minds if they get their act together. I am also as at Granniopteryx on Twitter, Gab, and Parler, and I let you know when I've uploaded videos on those platforms, because sometimes, for instance, if you're watching this on YouTube, you might not get notifications. Please share this. Share this video. Right, that's share this video, like it, contribute to the channel if you can, and check your subscription to make sure that you really are still subscribed, because they sometimes seem to slough off. To all of you who have contributed to my channel, thank you, thank you, thank you. And, well, till next time.